Okay, let's get into this. For today's deep dive, we're tackling a feeling that is, I think, almost universal, but we just don't talk about it enough. It's that quiet, heavy feeling that you are always late.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That anxiety that says you're late in life, or maybe late in healing, or late in becoming the person you thought you'd be by now.
Right.
It's that little hum of inadequacy that just hits you when you see a friend's wedding post or a colleague gets another promotion.
And that quiet pressure, it almost always boils down to one really painful internal question, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What's wrong with me?
Yeah. Why am I the only one?
Exactly. And that is the core feeling our source material is really digging into today. So the mission here, it isn't just to summarize.
Right.
It's to pull out the key insights that just completely dismantle this whole idea of being behind, to reframe how you even look at your own progress.
We want to give you the mental tools to just shrug that off because the source kicks off with such a relatable point. It says we live in a world that, well, it absolutely loves timelines.
It's obsessed with them. Benchmarks, age markers, these standardized schedules for what success is supposed to look like.
Totally.
And the source points out that society sets these checkpoints everywhere. Sometimes it's really explicit, like in a career path
Or in school.
or in school,
Yeah.
but often it's more subtle. It's just in the culture. The drone of by 30, you should own a home, or that voice in your head that says, by now, you should have it all figured out.
And that pressure isn't an accident, is it? It's kind of a feature of a system that just values predictability.
For sure. Predictability and efficiency.
Mm.
If you're not hitting those marks, the default feeling just becomes anxiety.
What's really fascinating is how fast we internalize those things. Those external, sometimes totally made-up timelines, they become our own measure of value.
That's the critical link. That's what the source argues against so powerfully. Without even realizing it, we start measuring our worth by how fast we're moving.
Speed equals value.
Exactly. In a culture that kind of equates productivity with being a good person, speed and success and worth all get tangled up. So if you're moving slow, or God forbid,
Right.
you pause.
And right.
The story you tell yourself is that you're less worthy, less capable, maybe even broken. And that's when we start to self-sabotage because you're just exhausted from trying to keep up.
I think we've all felt that exhaustion, but I mean, is there a risk of just romanticizing being slow? Does the source talk about how to know if you're resting versus just, procrastinating?
That's a great question, but the source actually steers us away from getting bogged down in those kinds of metrics.
Oh, interesting.
It argues that the second you start asking if your pace is good enough, you've already bought into the wrong idea.
You're already playing the game.
You're already playing the game. So instead, it offers this really powerful counter premise. It's like an anchor for everything else we're going to talk about.
And this is it. This is the core truth we really wanted to pull out for you right away. It's simple. Life is not a race, and growth is not linear. Just hearing that, it makes you question every single timeline you've ever put on yourself.
It does. Because if growth isn't a straight line, if it's, messy with plateaus and loops and even steps backward before you leap forward, then that's the first step to giving yourself some grace.
Like learning an instrument or something.
Exactly. You don't just get better every single day. You hit a wall, you step back, maybe you try something totally different for a while, and then boom, you have a breakthrough.
And the breakthrough needed the pause.
The breakthrough needed the pause.
That makes so much sense. This idea that progress has to be this constant upward slope it's a myth. And it's the myth we judge ourselves by.
Right.
So we need that reframing before we can even begin to talk about the biggest energy drain of all, which is comparison.
Ah, yes. The comparison trap. This is where the source gets really specific about the flawed data we're all using to judge ourselves.
I think everyone knows that feeling. You see someone who seems to have checked off every life milestone 2 years ahead of schedule, and it messes with your own clock.
And the source tells us exactly where we go wrong with that. It all comes down to selective visibility.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, what we see every day on social media and our professional lives, it's always curated. It's always polished. You're not seeing the full 360-degree story.
You just see the highlight.
You just see the highlights. It's like we're comparing our own messy first draft manuscript to someone else's published best-selling book.
It's the illusion of the finished product. We don't see the years of prep work, the scrapped drafts, the rejections.
Precisely.
Right.
And the source really details the missing pieces. We consciously don't see their doubts. We don't see their pauses, those times they felt totally stuck before their next big move.
Mm-hmm.
And crucially, We don't see their setbacks, the failures. Maybe they had a health crisis or a family emergency that just took them off the map for a year. We don't see any of that.
So, okay, if you put those two things together, you've got your own, messy, complicated behind-the-scenes story with all the failures and the moments you had to start over. And you hold that up against someone else's perfectly edited highlight reel.
Well, then the outcome is basically inevitable, isn't it? The source is crystal clear on this. Feeling behind is the natural but totally misleading result.
It's not a reflection of reality.
Not at all. It's a reflection of bad data. You're comparing apples to, like, professionally polished, prize-winning oranges and then feeling bad you didn't win the prize. The whole model is rigged.
Once you see that, you can start reframing those moments that feel like failure. And that shifts the whole conversation from, am I going fast enough, to, I don't know, am I learning enough?
And that focus on learning, that takes us right into the next part of this deep dive, where the source gives us these 3 really profound redefinitions for what we call delay.
Okay, let's get into those. What are the 3 things we mistake for failure?
The first one is that being slow doesn't mean being stuck.
Hmm.
We're so conditioned to think that if we're not accelerating, we're just stopped. But the source says slowness is often the pace you need for deep integration, for processing things, for building resilience.
It's like building a custom house versus one of those prefab ones.
That's a perfect analogy. The custom build takes way longer, but the foundation is stronger, the materials are better. Slowness often creates something that lasts.
Right. Speed can sacrifice quality. So if you're moving slowly, you might actually be building a more solid foundation for your future.
Exactly. The source tells us to see those slow periods as gestation. Just because you can't see the progress above the ground doesn't mean the roots aren't growing deeper.
I love that. So if that's true for being slow, what about stopping altogether? That feels like giving up in our culture.
Which brings us to redefinition number 2. Resting doesn't mean quitting.
Okay.
In our world of, relentless productivity, we treat rest like a moral failing.
Yeah.
It's something you earn only when everything else is done, which is never.
Of course.
The source just flips that completely. It says rest isn't the absence of work. It's a vital part of it. It's productive. It's when your brain gets to process all the stuff you've been taking in.
So the pause is the processing time. That moves rest from being a luxury to, like, a critical operational need.
Absolutely. And the third one is just as powerful, especially for anyone who's ever changed careers or walked away from something they spent years on.
Yeah.
The third redefinition is that starting over doesn't mean you failed.
Oh, that's a big one.
It's maybe the most damaging belief of all.
Mm-hmm.
The source insists that starting over actually means you learned something huge.
Right. You learned enough to know you needed to pivot.
Exactly. You gained clarity,
Yeah?
and you're now applying that hard-won knowledge. Calling that failure is
Yeah.
it's mislabeling an intelligent course correction.
Can we use an example? Like, say you spent 5 years becoming an engineer, and then you realize you hate it and want to open a bakery. The voice in your head screams, you wasted 5 years.
And the source would say you didn't waste a single day. You gained organizational skills, you learned how to manage a budget, how to manage your time, and you gained the crystal clear knowledge that engineering wasn't for you.
All of which is transferable to the bakery.
Totally. You didn't start that bakery from zero. You started it from 5 years of professional development, plus the invaluable knowledge of what you don't want. That time matters because it helped you find your true north.
Wow. That insight alone is huge because when you see it that way, you stop feeling like you're falling behind. The source says sometimes you're just taking the time you need to heal, to learn, to survive.
And that time is not a void. It's not a gap. It's an investment in your own foundation. The source uses this analogy of a field. Sometimes you have to let it lie fallow for a season before you can plant what you really want to grow.
And that time matters.
That time matters, absolutely.
So, okay, we've identified the timeline obsession, we've dismantled the comparison trap, and we've redefined what delay even means. Now we get to the really supportive part, right? The permissions.
Yes. This is like a deliberate list of gentle reminders, or, as you said, permissions we can grant ourselves to escape the tyranny of the external clock.
So what's the first one?
The first one is foundational. You are allowed to grow at your own pace.
That flies directly in the face of everything we talked about at the start. If you give yourself that permission, all the external noise it becomes irrelevant, doesn't it?
It does, because your pace is unique. It's based on your actual resources,
Right.
your energy, your health, your finances, not some abstract ideal.
Okay, what's the second permission?
The second one tackles that feeling of being stuck on a path just because you've already invested so much time in it. The source says, very clearly, you are allowed to change direction. It reframes a pivot, not as inconsistency, but as a sign of strength, of high self-awareness.
That feels especially important now. The world is changing so fast. The idea of having one 40-year plan is kind of absurd.
Yeah.
Being able to change direction is a survival skill.
For sure. And the third permission, this one is aimed right at the heart of modern anxiety, where we feel like we have to project total confidence and mastery all the time.
Right.
The source gives us permission to just exhale, and it affirms. You're allowed to not have everything figured out yet.
That's a massive relief. It just validates the reality that life is messy, and figuring it out is a lifelong process, not a checkbox you tick off at 30.
Exactly. If you think you have it all figured out, you're probably not growing anymore. Not knowing is the starting point for all growth.
So we have these permissions, we've redefined our pauses, and now the source brings it all back to this very moment. It gives this final, comforting note about where you are right now.
It does. It reinforces that whole idea of journey over destination. It says, where you are right now is not a mistake. It's part of your journey.
Meaning every delay, every pivot, it's all part of the story.
It's all contributing. It shifts this present moment from being a point of failure to just a point of necessary development, even if you can't see why just yet.
So if we pull this all together, what's the synthesis? We started with this heavy feeling of being late, but the source seems to just deny every part of that feeling.
It does. The synthesis is really powerful because it hands you these three clear, affirming denials to counter that internal critic. You're not late, you're not broken, you're not behind.
Wow.
They're just simple, powerful statements to hold on to when the noise gets too loud.
It strips away all that judgment and just leaves you with the quiet reality of your own growth. You're becoming, even if it's slow or messy.
And that leaves us with our final provocative thought for you to take away from this. The source concludes by focusing entirely on that quiet, continuous process of evolution. You are becoming quietly, slowly, beautifully. The ultimate affirmation where all these ideas come together is this. That process of becoming at your own pace with all its stops and starts and healing, it is inherently enough.
Enough on its own.
Enough on its own. The second you truly accept that, you realize you don't need a timeline to validate the profound work you're doing. The messy work of becoming who you are meant to be is the only timeline that really matters.
That's a powerful place to end it. Shifting the focus from hitting a target to just embracing the process. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We'll see you next time.